Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Karen Johnson. I am a digital learning consultant with the Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum, and we have a scheduled webinar today that we will be talking about implementing the Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum courses. Several people joining us today. Jon Fila will be talking about getting started with MPCC and specifically talking about English language arts. Jon is a specialist in many areas, working with District 287, and he can describe his work there in more detail. Caitlin Cahill is a technology integrationist with Orono Public Schools and also a consultant to the project. And we have a teacher implementation network, which is basically a Google community, and our 3 moderators this year for that community will be joining us. Mary Kerbers from Rush City, who teaches math and science. Jody Lund from Minnewaska Public Schools, a social studies specialist and also technology integrationist. And Dan McGuire, who has taught elementary science in Minneapolis Public Schools and is the executive director of Stone Arch Bridge Initiative for Educational Resources, or SAVIER, where he provides professional development for K-12 and higher education faculty. There are others who will be joining and introducing themselves via the live chat, but at this time I'm going to turn it over to Jon Fila.
Thanks, Karen. I am a curriculum coordinator with District 287, and how I got started in the process of collaborative curriculum really just came out of some work with Moodleshare and presenting to some curriculum directors around the area who had just decided, instead of just doing something on their own, we were going to maybe try to put our resources together and see what we could create and share that way. And then out of that, the Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum was born. One of the resources we've developed as part of that collaborative is our implementation checklist. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll also post a link to that in the chat. Oh, it won't let me post URLs in the chat, so maybe someone can help me work on that while I share my screen.
John, you want to put the link in the group chat and I'll post it out?
In the group chat in the Hangout?
Yep.
Okay, let me grab it. Here we go. So what I just shared was the link to our readiness implementation checklist. And basically what was happening was I was going out to school districts around the state and presenting on the partnership curriculum that they had available, and that was the first time that the teachers had been hearing that they had access to a digital curriculum, and it started to freak a lot of people out. A lot of times they had just adopted Google Apps, they have new devices that they were handing out, and they were just getting started into the world of learning management systems, or they had just switched learning management systems. So it wasn't really going that well. So what we decided to do was put out an implementation checklist, just so that districts could consider some of the things they want to keep in mind before rolling out a large digital curriculum like this. So a lot of it has to do with some higher level decisions and just making sure that the support is there for teachers. When we get down into just some of the personal readiness, we want to make sure that teachers know what they're actually using this for, that it isn't just something that we're going to use because it's digital, we're going to use it because it's new. We'd really like to know what teachers are currently doing in the classroom in those districts, and then how this might help support their work. Maybe provide them some supplemental resources, or be something that could save them a lot of time in terms of moving their own resources over to some type of digital format. Since this is already there, then this is something they'd be able to edit and have a little bit more control over than a typical vendor curriculum. We'll get into some of that more later. And then just that making sure that the support network is there, so that There are people that are there that can help with the learning management system, that teachers and students can all have access to the materials, and that they have some kind of evaluation in place. So we make that available to our members before. What we ask them to do is just at least look through the checklist and talk about it before they even get access to the courses. And once they fill that out, then what we do is we set 2 or 3 people from each district in the partnership. We're up over 200 members now across the state. We give them access to the courses in their preferred learning management format. So they may access the courses from Schoology, they may access courses from Moodle, some just want to access the courses from Google Drive. So I'm going to just jump into just a little bit how I use the English 12 course. And so in my own setting, I've been a teacher for about 18 years. I've taught multiple grade levels, college classes, multiple subjects, primarily English language arts in middle and high school. A lot of that time was spent in the ALC. Right now, I'm teaching some supplemental courses for Northern Star Online, and those are sections of English 12, Semester A and Semester B. At Northern Star Online, we have rolling enrollment, so students aren't just coming in at the same time and moving through the content together. I have a student that just started last week, and I'll have students that continue to start throughout the summer and throughout the school year, and students are finishing up all the time as well. So one of the challenges of an online teacher in a supplemental program like that is there are no due dates, there's no end dates. Each student's end date and start date is different. So if a student asks a question about something that happens later in the course or in the later part of a book that other students are on, then I need to be able to know the content well enough that I can answer a question about any part of the course at any time. So that, I think, is a unique challenge that maybe just happens in the online world. And then we have varied credit requirements. So we have students coming in that maybe they just need quarter B credit, or they just need, a trimester A or a semester B, or whatever it is. We offer students the opportunity to just see what they need and earn those credit segments. And because we're an online program, and it's one of the programs for Intermediate District 287, and we have a large special ed population, we want to make sure that all the content we produce, and this is kind of a driving philosophy of the Minnesota Partnership as well, that the content's accessible in various formats. So regardless of device, regardless of software used to access the content, regardless of student disability, if somebody needs an assistive device to access the content, we want to make sure that it'll work with screen readers. We want to make sure it works with keyboard navigation for students who can't manipulate a mouse or a trackpad. We want to make sure it'll work on iPads, Chromebooks, whatever. So a lot of work goes into just making the content as flexible as possible. And we weren't always getting that from some of the vendor materials that we were selecting a few years ago. So we actually we go with Moodle, and a lot of that has to do with our ability to customize it to suit our unique student populations. So we can customize roles with different abilities. We can customize the content students see so that students working in those different segments only see what they're supposed to. We've done a lot of work with just completion tracking in general and making sure that there are progress indicators that pop up throughout the course, so that basically when a student does something, they see that some type of progress has been made, and then that helps facilitate their completion of the class. We get a lot more user data through our LMS, through our, some pretty detailed reports that we set up. And we can do a lot more with some of the interactive modules, like the book module or the lesson module or the quiz module, even the glossary module to some extent. We provide some level of interaction so that students are a little more engaged with the content. We can break it up and have them answer questions as they work their way through it. I mentioned the customized roles, and the conditional access just allows us to only just show students what they need based on what they've done previously. And we can also restrict parts of content for student. If they don't need that part for their credit segment, then they just don't see it. So I'm going to get back into this a little bit later, but I wanted to show you in terms of the development of the content for the partnership, before the courses are launched as ready, all of them go through a review in 4 different areas. We have them go through a review on assessment. We want to make sure that there are directions for what a teacher should do with the course and what students should do with the course. We have a rubric for design and the actual content, making sure that each benchmark has been addressed. There isn't a specific rubric item within these 4 for equity. We try to build that throughout all of the courses. And so it's not just a standalone equity lesson or a culturally responsive curriculum that's just kind of sits alone on its own. We want to make sure that that's present throughout all of our courses. So in all of our courses, you'll see that multiple narratives are used. We want to make sure that it's just a core component of what we do, that unique learning styles are met. We do a lot in terms of multiple measures of assessment to make sure that students are just doing the same kind of assignment over and over again, but they get in some cases, a choice or just different options to try different things. We do try to support the courses with some ideas for teachers on how they might use some of the content. I mentioned that I teach online. I was actually the writer for the English 12 class, and when I wrote it, I didn't write it specifically for an online use. I tried to keep those types of directions a little generic so that I wasn't saying things like, at your table, talk to your partner about, or in your group of 3. I'd leave those types of things out. So you would want to customize those kinds of directions based on your setting. And when I took the English 12 class and turned it into a Moodle specific class for use with Northern Star Online, it took me about 8 hours per semester course just to kind of rewrite things for my online students and make sure I was going through each assignment and all of the settings so that it was something that would be a little bit more appealing to that type of learner. We were trying to strive for consistency within the design of the course. So one of the things we did early on was we took the design element off of our writer's plate. And then we had people that specifically focus on getting the content into something a little more consistent from unit to unit, naming conventions, even just the style guide for the course and the content, how images are aligned, how content is cited. We wanted to make sure that that looks the same across the curriculum. So we're still working on, going back to some of those earlier courses and making sure that we're doing that for everything. So once these go through the rubric, they go back to the writers. Those writers make the necessary updates. So this process might happen a couple of times, and then the courses are launched for pilot to our members. And then that's where the teacher and the district has some choices. So we do support multiple learning management systems, and we do offer ideas for teachers and districts on what they can do. So I'm going to throw out a few of those now. So by default, this is the English 12 curriculum. There are a few reasons why we develop everything in Google Drive. And one of these reasons is because we could just give somebody a link, and if they're just using the class as a supplemental resource, which I think a lot of the members, when they first start using the courses, they use them that way and they're not adopting the entire course yet. They just want to run through some of the content and see how it goes. So what we do is, so in Unit 1, you'll see the items labeled in the order that they should be used in the course. Or some different options here. So a lot of the text readings we make available in multiple formats. Students might get a PDF file of a longer reading, an EPUB version, and then that way, if they have an e-reader, then they can engage with the text and do a lot more with it in terms of marking it up, taking notes, highlighting, searching for text, and they get their own copy. A lot more than they could do if we just gave them a paper copy of the book. And there are also links to read the versions online. There's a Moodle book version. There are audio versions that we use with a lot of our texts. So just making sure that they're available in as many formats as necessary. So what a teacher might do is just print off one of these items as a handout for the class. Instead of just making a whole book for the class, they're just, a lot of times teachers will just project individual Google Docs up on the screen and talk about them as a class. But one of the things that I've been doing lately is working with the University of Minnesota Open Textbook Project. We were trying to see if there might be an audience for making kind of open textbook versions of these courses. And so what we've started to do is take elements of these courses and see if this is the one, make a textbook version of it. So this is the teacher version of Unit 1, and then throughout the summer we'll be working on putting the rest of the course in this version. And so the changes that get made to this content, let me just scroll down to where some of the content is. Sorry about the scroll. Here we go. A lot of times in the courses you won't see URLs at all. They'll just be embedded directly into the LMS or directly into the page. But since this is likely a resource that's going to be printed as a book with a spiral binding for teachers, we want to make sure that we're using some short URLs and making sure that the URLs are there on the page. So if the students do have a writing or a device, that they can find out what those are, and they're not just links that are embedded on the page. I know how frustrating that can be. I got a mailing just last week telling me that I needed to go complete something for relicensure, and I could tell that there was a embedded link on the page, but since they mailed it to me, they didn't have it listed anywhere else on the page, and I wasn't quite sure where to go with that. So in this case, we rewrite everything so that the URLs are there. We change the spacing and the layout a little bit more, and then what we need to do then is just individually license every page for different Creative Commons license attributions, and then the assessments are provided. And you'll see this is the teacher version, so the answers are there. But anyway, what this course could be, even if you use a learning management system, this might be useful just as a companion to the course. Students may have these textbook resources available, and they can have them there as they work, or they might just have them on their devices and then go into the LMS just to submit their work for those students that just don't want to spend a lot of time staring at a device. And one of the reasons why we put all of our content in Google Drive like this is because when we embed this into the learning management system and multiple changes and multiple copies get made, there are potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of this class that go out into existence in Moodle and Schoology and Canvas. And we want to make sure that if somebody reports a link has broken, or they need some more detailed information, or as we learn new things about accessibility or ELL learners, that we can go in and make the changes on these Google Docs. And if somebody's using the embedded version of the course, then they get the updates right away, and they don't have to worry about which version of the course they have. So when we launch the courses, this structure is pretty well complete. We make sure that all the benchmarks are addressed that need to be within all the assignments. So then all we have to do is then go in and edit these individual pages. So once those are embedded in the LMS, then we can make those copies everywhere, and we really just focus on updating this version of the course in Google Drive, since we know everybody roughly has the same version. Okay, so I'll jump back. Well, and the other thing I would say just about this textbook version is once you get that, that's a nice transition into digital curriculum. If teachers just aren't comfortable with it, or the LMS might just be too much of a stretch because it doesn't quite make sense to them and everything's broken up and they're not sure how they would use it, this kind of gives them gets a foot in the door for the digital curriculum. And what's happened with me in our district, when I give teachers paper copies of the units like this, they'll often come back and ask if there's an LMS version of the course available. And that's even easier because that's where everything came from. So we can give that to them right away, and they're already somewhat comfortable with the content because they've been using these book versions. So everything in the courses we develop is either OER or we have permission to use it. And so if we're lacking something, we go out and go out to other organizations and seek that permission, or we make new partnerships where we can so that we can use high quality content from wherever we find it. So what OER allows us to do is not really be restricted in terms of what we can do, how we format, what file types we use. And because we reformat everything for accessibility, they're really easy to find and navigate within the structure of our courses. So what helps me by using these two versions, not just the LMS version, but even the Google Drive version, is I can send individual links out to parents so that they can see what students are working on or what students might be struggling with, and then can have a conversation about, you know, making sure they're looking at the same things that their students are. I mentioned the student reports before, but we try to make data-informed decisions when it comes to what improvements we make. So I will look at things like what percentage of students have accessed which pages in the course, and if some of them are low, I look for ways that I can encourage students to review the content that they don't seem to be clicking on, or if some of them are getting lower assignments or lower grades on some of the assignments, those are the ones I'll target for revision in terms of directions or other options. One of the things I really like about using this course is just how easy it is to update. There's an assignment in here about, let's see, not this one, on memes. And there, this assignment was written a couple of years ago now, and just within the last, I would say, 6 months, memes have really kind of exploded in terms of how they evolve, how they look, how they're formatted. It's a lot more open-ended than it used to be. So I was able to add some content to that just last night with different examples for students who are maybe just sick of what that traditional meme looked like, and have some more choice built into the assignments that way. And then that also helps them see that just because something didn't look like the way I had it formatted in the class didn't mean it wasn't a meme. That's one they particularly struggle with, just because they're harder to make from scratch than you might think. Lots of opportunities for students to review, lots of opportunities for me to build in review quizzes that can be self-graded. I mentioned that. And the timely references and resources, just constantly going in. I have a section on net neutrality that probably gets updated more than any other section in the course, just because of you know, when administrations change and rules change and guidelines change, I want to be able to give students the most current information and make sure they have an accurate understanding of what something as complicated as net neutrality might be. So I won't read all this, but I'll just mention that students regularly report that this was the best class they've ever taken. They feel like there were lots of real world examples built in. It wasn't a typical English course. They say they actually have fun. They feel prepared for college, that their research skills are better than that they had been. So it's a lot of fun seeing that kind of feedback come into the course. And every time student gives feedback on an assignment, then I can go in and update that one so that every time a student goes through the course becomes better because it's evolving based on that user's experience with the course. I mentioned just taking the time to make sure that you can customize it for your own setting. So what I'm currently doing with my version now is just trying to find more ways to automate things. Seeing if there are ways that the course can do more of its own self-facilitation and self-pacing. So I'm playing around more with review quizzes and making sure that students that get a higher score are able to move on, and those who might miss some of the items then have an opportunity for review. We're doing lots of stuff with feedback loop, lots with audio versions, lots of tutorials. We do an orientation. We've been doing some work with just different types of feedback so that students aren't just getting a score, but they'll see detailed text feedback related to their replies. And then we're also doing a lot of work with our teachers on how to give encouraging feedback that leads to more and better work. And now that I've been using the course for a few years, then I could take some of those examples of student submissions and put those out there for students as a support in some cases. Okay, so then I'm going to jump then just quickly to some of the work I've been doing. So this is my course, the English 12 course. We call it English 4. You'll see that there are things that are called out just for each student in different credit segments. A lot of stuff just for teachers in here that students will never see. And then the course is broken up by units, and you can see that they're restricted to whatever group that student might be in. And in this course, we use the book Frankenstein. So you'll see there are multiple versions of the text for students to access here, just based on their own preferences, or the audio version if they want to download those or listen to them and follow along with the book. In terms of English 11, what I've been working on lately is that was a course that was finished a couple of years ago with the partnership. So I'm going through it now just for our online course, for our online program, and making sure it's suitable for that audience. So what I've done is gone in and replaced quite a few of the images that were in here that just weren't very exciting to me. I took a unit on, I think there was a unit in here on dream catchers, and it wasn't specific to any particular native tribe, and it just didn't feel very fleshed out to me. So what I did was turned it into an assignment on cultural appropriation, and gave students some resources on that. And now maybe that's giving them something a little more kind of controversial and interesting to write about than just a simple artifact. And having to write about those important topics now, I think, are going to be an important skill for them moving forward. So we're doing a lot with just swapping out some of the resources that were in here. This course originally was written, it was a little more teacher friendly than student friendly. So I'm rewriting some of the unit talking directly to the students so that they're not seeing a lot of the benchmark language, the numbers identifying them, and just trying to clean it up and make sure it's a little more conversational and supportive, and kind of helps them work their way through it. So that covers quite a bit. I'm going to see if there are any questions here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see what I missed while I was doing all that talking. Caitlin or Karen, did you want to jump in, or Dan or Jody?
Dan mentions he's hearing someone speaking in the background. I don't hear that.
It's not me.
Yeah.
I'll look at the chat here.
I have a question for you, John.
Yeah.
When you make the changes, like you're making in English 11 and 12, how do the current users of those courses know that there are changes?
Yeah. So for English 12, I've kind of appointed myself as the course guardian for English 12, because it's just kind of been a special project for me that I was particularly interested in. So I go in, and every time I make a change to my class, I go in and make a change to the master version of the course. For English 11, what will happen, because I'm making all the changes in a learning management system, what we'll end up doing is taking that version of the course and remaking a new partnership version. And then continuing members in the partnership will then have access to that new version. The original members that were just part of the initial wave, they won't have access to those updates because it really will be a completely different course by the time I'm done with it. So I'm about halfway through now, and I plan on finishing semester B within the next few weeks, and then we'll start the work to get that ready for teachers sometime this summer that are continuing members.
And they should expect to take some time to look the course over if it's been changed.
Yeah, I would hope so, and even compare and just kind of see where we're headed in terms of what types of changes that we're making that they can hopefully expect to see throughout our courses. We do try to target the courses that get updates based on new content we find, ones that have been kind of targeted for new versions just based on user feedback, or if they were earlier in the process and we knew so much more about it as we moved along, we will go back and start working on those courses that were developed early on in the process. Any other questions? Is it bad etiquette if I just put my email address in the chat?
No, that's fine.
So I'll put that in there if anyone on now or watching the recording has any questions. Oh, it won't let me do that either.
Is my mic on now?
Yeah, Dan, you're on.
Yes.
Caitlin, it's not letting me put in
Thanks.
URLs or email addresses, so maybe we can just throw that in the description or something once the recording's up.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
So are the versions that are showing up in Schoology similar to the ones in Moodle?
They're identical.
Okay. Because I haven't seen those yet.
So what we do is we give our members access codes to a Schoology resource group, and they'll go grab the course. They'll take from the resource section and import them into courses for their teachers. And all of the courses basically are just made out of Moodle backup files. They look and work the exact same way in Schoology because we keep the types of modules we use pretty basic. And then what we'll end up doing as second versions of the courses come out, we'll create a separate Schoology group for continuing members.
Mary or Jody, do you want to make any comments about the use of the digital curriculum at your districts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that you can really mold the curriculum to fit whatever needs or learning management system you're using. We do use Moodle as well, and what I've done to sit down with teachers who have decided to use the curriculum is kind of show them how you can take the information and plug it into an assignment or a lesson module to make it a little bit more interactive, and be able to collect those assignments right within Moodle. And they've really liked the way that has turned out.
And we are a Schoology school, and I agree. It's nice to have the pieces all there, but it's great to be able to adapt to what we need. I know several teachers have used their core curriculum and pulled out pieces from the MPCC materials that fit and blend in with what they've got, and a couple of teachers who are, this is their core, and they blend in some of the other resources and lessons that they know work well also.
Do you foresee us at all being able to travel to different districts and present or lead training on how this would look in different learning management systems? Because I think we would get more teachers to utilize this if I was able to train them further. And unfortunately, there's just not enough time, or there's only one of me, a tech integration specialist, to meet the needs of 90 teachers. So I think if we would be able to provide further support like that, or continue to do webinars like we are, I think we could get more people to utilize it to its really utmost potential.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing more webinars just to have them available as resources. But one of the things that I think has been beneficial is when you know, the kind of core group in the partnership in terms of development and training goes, if we can work individually with districts using the courses, we can customize some degree of PD for those districts, so we can find out what your goals are, what your teachers' goals are, and then kind of customize a training specifically for that group, instead of just kind of saying, here, this is what we're doing, now we're going out to these areas. So we prefer to just make it specific to the districts and even the buildings sometimes that are using the courses.
I've participated in one of those on-site training days before, and the teachers appreciated being able to dig in and ask specific questions about what they were seeing and how people were using it, and figuring out what is there and how they can use it, I think was a lot better than the webinars. But this is a great way to get the masses, hey, this is available, check it out.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Dan, do you want to talk about the service that Xavier provides and some of your philosophical ideas about training?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we do, and is to provide that very specific training for teams of teachers within districts or groups of districts. And then we're also raising money to help pay for that. So it's exactly what you're suggesting, Mary and Jody. And then the other big component is Xavier is raising money to help support paying that. I'll say right now, we have a group of 8th grade science teachers down in, not a group, some science teachers down in southern Minnesota, Fairmont, Blue Earth, St. James, that are interested in forming a group. So, and Mary, if you have an 8th grade science teacher, I was thinking you taught science. But if you know of an 8th grade science teacher that's using Moodle that wants to get involved, let's get in touch.
Yeah, I do science and math. Moodle scares our teachers. But it might still be a good idea to get a couple of them connected with others that are using the same grade level materials.
How many 8th grade science teachers do you have?
One.
That's you.
No, I've got 6th grade. He right now our 7th, we have a very small school, so our 7th and 8th grade sciences are taught by one teacher.
Sure.
So it would be good for him to talk to more than himself.
Right.
So,
well, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, and I know he's active in a lot of other boards, and he actually helped to write some of the 7th grade stuff. So he's well aware of what's out there.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get in touch. I'll talk to him.
I think the approach that Dan and his group are taking is just so excellent, because it is customized to a district or a group of districts that have similar goals and are using the same LMS. And it's, if I'm understanding it correct, Dan, it's continuing. It's not sort of a one-shot training. So there can be support as teachers are implementing the curriculum.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Thanks for pointing that out, Karen, because what we're talking about is a year's worth of support. I think it takes a teacher a full year to get comfortable implementing a digital curriculum, and implementing OER digital curriculum with an LMS like Moodle takes a year. You know, you can't, no teacher is going to be comfortable doing that even with a 2-hour. I mean,
No.
I don't know, it takes a year.
Right.
And I think that's what we're going to need to do in order to get some widespread adoption.
Well, even in that, it takes possibly even longer than a year just to get to build your curriculum and digitizing the curriculum, but that's not even laying the foundation of, you know, really analyzing these standards. And even though this curriculum is aligned with standards, but taking a look at, you know, what are your essential questions and power standards that you want to focus on, because we know we can't teach every single standard. So even having that foundation before they get to that point is crucial.
Right, right. Yeah, clearly it takes even more than a year. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll point out too is that Moodle.org is in discussions with or thinking about creating a place to house courses similar to what Schoology does. And of course, they would like, and Tom Murdoch is the guy that's in charge of that. And he's the, he recently joined Moodle.org after taking a few years off after he sold Moodle Rooms. But he's interested in creating a repository like that and using, you know, MPCC OER content as soon as we can get it released. So I think that'll be a big boost to Moodle users.
Dan, are you working with a certain service cooperative down in South Central Minnesota, or are those schools?
Yeah, Jason and Dave, South Central.
Oh, out of South Central in Mankato, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's, for those small school districts, it's essential that they have a place to come together. As Mary said, she has a single 8th grade science teacher. I think that ECMAC has been a leader, South Central, and I think Southwest, West Central, over there in Marshall, might be logical places where we can model some of this coming together for training and having continuing support.
Yeah, it takes quite a bit of discussion, because if you're going to do a full curriculum adoption using digital tools, you know, it's actually even a bigger conversation than a new textbook adoption. And I think that's why it's kind of a difficult process for some teachers to get involved.
Right.
And, you know, I think once we get this going, you know, there'll be some, they'll start getting some momentum. It's the first couple of districts using it that are the slow ones.
Right. And Jody used to teach down in Blue Earth. And in addition to Jason and Dave, Jen Berkner down there is a leader in.
Her and I are actually going to be working on a presentation to discuss MPCC this fall at the Rural Tech Conference, or the Rural Minnesota Rural. Is it MREA?
Minnesota Rural Education Association.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
We're working on a presentation to kind of get the word more out there on Minnesota Cooperative curriculum.
Excellent. We'd like to add that probably to our webpage so that people know it'll be there. So
somehow we need to get the word out more to the administrators and curriculum folks too. I know a lot of teachers have heard about this and they've seen bits and pieces and wonder what this is, but
yeah.
We need that administrative side to be more aware. Not that this just is, but the process that we've gone through to, you know, really review and revise, and that it's not just a bunch of teachers got together and wrote this. There was a real process here.
I think that's really important, and that's actually who this presentation that we put together is geared for, and that's who mostly attends this conference. So we're hoping to help a little bit with that.
Good.
well, and we can help by providing you with if they're interested, what are the next steps? Now, of course, there's contacts in their region, but we can also provide some next steps.
Yeah,
for
that'd be
them.
absolutely.
John or Caitlin, do you want to make any comment about where we're at currently with the 40 courses?
I just uploaded the 33rd course of 40 yesterday afternoon. That was English 8. And I know we've got a few more ready to go soon. And I expect the initial wave of the 40 to be done then by the end of summer. And if that's not true, maybe John can let me know. But I think that's our current plan.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's a few more that'll be done in June. U.S. History, Science 4 and 5, and then the last two.
English 7.
English 7, yeah. English 3 and 5, I think, through the summer.
Well, if there are no other comments or questions, we can call this a wrap. And I thank everybody for attending today. We'll see everybody in the Teacher Implementation Network. Please continue to add resources as you come across them. Or if you have any sort of questions that you might want to ask the group. I think we're now around 55 members. And I've invited other teachers who have left comments through the feedback form to participate also. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.